Welcome back to Truck Tech, everyone. You know, it is great to get a chance when you come to a place like the ACT Expo. And of course, we're sharing a lot of information here, not all in the week it happened, but it's great to be able to catch up with some people. We've not spent any real time with the XOS for quite some time. The story hasn't been all great for them, but they are doing better than just kicking around. I'm here with co-founder and CEO, Dakota Semler. Great to see you again.
Good to see you.
I think we caught up maybe a couple of years ago now. It's been a while.
It has been a little while.
You guys have been through a lot, and we'll talk about some of that. But I want to get a sense of sort of you've got some pretty interesting news. You made some news here at the show with your step van and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So why don't you just jump right in?
Yeah. So we've had quite a few announcements recently. One of which we made at the show is our powertrain partnership with Bluebird. So our Powered by Exos division has been working with them for quite some time on launching a new commercial chassis for them, and we're working on some other exciting projects as well. So really very excited about that one. We also recently announced a partnership with Winnebago. So we're building a commercial chassis for their commercial division, which is exciting. We're going to be able to build some mobile medical vehicles, mobile libraries, command centers.
They did that a few years ago. I think that might have been with Motive Power Systems at the time, if I'm not mistaken. But they were doing that. They had some fascinating executions. They had a not a blood mobile, but an actual blood testing facility at UCLA, I believe. Actually wrote about some of the stuff that they did. So this is more aimed at actually commercializing this, not just doing some test stuff.
Exactly.
Do you expect a certain number of units out of this, or?
So it's a small market overall, the commercial RV chassis, but we actually think it's a market that's going to go significantly electric really quick. And the reason for that is most of these vehicles operate out of a local base. They might travel no more than 50, 60 miles a day.
Sure.
But then they sit at a site and they might idle for 8 to 10, even 12 hours. And for instance, a phlebotomy clinic or a mobile blood drive center, they're going to sit there for 8 hours. They're not only going to have participants in the vehicle, but they're also going to have people waiting outside. And so zero emissions is more important than just the impact they're having on the road. They don't want a diesel genset or a little gas generator spewing emissions when somebody's waiting outside about to give blood.
Yeah, an APU isn't exactly the answer for this.
Yeah. So there's that market is obviously really in high demand. We're seeing mobile command centers, so for police and emergency services, a lot of interest there as well, because of the idling requirements that some of those city fleets and municipal fleets are now having to mitigate. So it's a strong market that we think is going to see high rates of electrification, even though it's still small.
Yeah, we'll get to the finances in a few minutes, but I think it's really interesting that you pivoted a little bit. A couple of years ago, you showed a Class 6 and a Class 8 truck. You were ready, kind of ready to go. They're still in the plan somewhere.
They are,
right?
Yep.
But they're not here today. I guess the idea is, though, getting that experience with the fuller chassis, the longer chassis. You've always, from the very early days, always said this is a customizable chassis. We can do a lot with this.
Yep.
Is that what's happening?
It's exactly what's happening. And you bring up an important point, is all the technology we've developed in this chassis behind you has been built on 7 years of engineering, millions of miles of vehicles on the road, and hundreds of vehicles out there in the field with real customers, not just a test fleet or a durability fleet. And that's important because every iteration or every vehicle configuration we build, we take the learnings from the previous generation and put it into a new chassis. So while we might be expanding laterally into slightly longer vehicles, slightly heavier or slightly lighter vehicles, we're still taking that compounded learning and putting it into those platforms. I think the other thing we've really recognized in recent years is we're building a sustainable business, and not just sustainable from the fact of building zero emissions vehicles and reducing emissions output from the trucks, but building a financially sustainable business. And so we want to sell into markets that we can get good unit volumes, we can get good profitability, and we can build a positive EBITDA business that grows in the long term. And I think we've been able to demonstrate that in the step van product, and we'll continue to do that in the new products.
Well, let's talk about the originals. Some of the original customers were like Loomis. Is it Loomis?
Yeah.
Yeah, Loomis was one, and you had a few others that were in that sort of, sort of heavier use, kind of heavier, need a heavier chassis kind of thing. Now, you're in a very, very crowded space with the electric step vans. There's lots of wannabes. There's lots of people who are kind of coming on.
Yeah.
And of course, now we've got from the electric side, you've got Rizon, you've got the 800-pound gorilla coming into the market. How important is it for you to be able to spread out from that, even if you can get your share?
Yeah. I think it's a good question, but ultimately what it comes down to is who's delivering trucks. We are delivering far more, the vast majority of electric step vans in this industry, even compared to some of the elephants in the room. And I think that speaks to not just the technology that we've built, but also how we go to market, how we service the vehicles in the aftermarket, how we're really involved in the charging process early on, so much so that we've developed a product to specifically address the delays that we experience with deploying utility infrastructure, getting permits. We really want to make sure that the customer has a great experience with our trucks. And a lot of that is making sure that they have a great experience with charging, with service and support, with parts availability.
Well, you showed this, and we've seen some other iterations of this kind of thing from others.
Yeah.
But this is something that I presume it's something you'll sell or at least to customers,
Yeah.
and therefore that brings in some of that money that you need.
We're already selling it. So we've delivered units in Q1. We're delivering more this quarter. And the funny thing was, we actually developed this product with our truck customers in mind. But really quickly after we launched, we got a lot of inbound interest from utility fleets, rental car fleets, other companies that were having the same infrastructure challenges, but maybe in a different class or a different market category.
Right.
And so now our pipeline and our sales backlog actually has more customers that are not Exos Trucks customers than are, which it's a good problem to have.
What kind of volumes are you talking about for this? I mean, if you it may as well be a vehicle. It comes on wheels.
So we think of it as a smaller product category than the step vans, because one unit will support 4 or even up to 8 vehicles charging. Okay. So if you have a step van fleet of 8-10 trucks, you could use potentially one of these to support that whole fleet. So we don't think it's going to be in line with our vehicle delivery volumes, but a fraction of that. But as we sell into a broader serviceable addressable market, we have several customers that operate multi-100,000 unit fleets that are buying these now. And I think that speaks to the applicability.
How do you energize these, by the way?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
So we don't have power generation on board. So this is an energy storage system and high-powered charging unit, all combined into one trailerized application. Okay. So we plug into the grid, and you can kind of think about it like those little mobile power packs you use to charge your cell phone or your computer. We trickle charge from the grid, and then that charges up the battery system. And when the vehicles come back to the depot, they discharge from that battery system.
Is this a form of microgrid?
It really is. If you think about it, functionally, it can connect to a grid, it can connect to a generator. We can plug into all kinds of different power. So in states where it's not constricted, or maybe for a resiliency application, we can use a diesel genset. In states where there might be some restrictions, we can use natural gas turbine or a linear generator, all kinds of different technologies to generate power for it. But what most of our customers are using it for is just mitigating that delay that they experience that the utilities are imposing upon them, and being able to upgrade their power.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned using trickle charge, because a lot of folks that's all they're left with right now until they can get the switchgear and everything else they need to to be energized. I am interested in also. I mean, you guys have been around for a while now. Once upon a time, we talked about the great name change, and that's something we don't really need to talk about anymore, because you most recently absorbed a name of a sort, and this is where you get into the finances a little bit. But very creative. I think they were looking for somewhere to put their capital, and said, "Raise your hand. I think I can use this." You want to take us through it?
Absolutely. So we just acquired Electrameccanica, and really the business had been shut down for some time. So they were a manufacturer of small electric vehicles. So what they were looking into is, how do they deploy their capital and really get the best returns for their investors? And they didn't want to redistribute it, because they felt there was still growth and still opportunity in this market. And they took a good look at over 100 companies, and really wanted to understand, what are the commercial prospects, what are the growth opportunities that exist within each of these different players in the industry. And they spent a lot of time with us looking through our sales backlog, our customer orders, our national account customers that are recurring customers, and a lot of our product portfolio. And they felt that we were the best opportunity. And so we worked out a deal, and we closed the transaction as of the end of March. And so we're pleased. We brought on some of their team members. Ultimately, it was a really good financing transaction for us. We brought another $50 million of capital
I
on.
was going to say, interesting thing to think of a capital raise in that fashion, but in a way it kind of was,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and you have had some difficulties though, Dakota. You did have to let some folks go. Uh, about a third, was it?
Yeah, it was close to a third. I think when we realized that we were not delivering trucks at the rate we wanted to be financially sustainable, we knew we needed to build the business into the right size to make sure we could scale and be sustainable in the future to support our existing customers and future opportunities that exist. So we actually cut OpEx nearly by 50%. We've gotten our margins up to better than legacy OEMs. We just announced Q1 earnings and we had 21% GAAP gross margin. So really taking a positive turn towards building a financially sustainable business. And we're continuing to solve problems and delays with infrastructure so we can deliver more trucks.
When you look at, and I guess it's not a nice way to say it, but when you look at the wreckage out there of those who have come and quite honestly not been able to make it,
Yeah.
I know you certainly don't figuratively or otherwise beat your chest about this, but you seem to be rising above.
Thank you.
To be. Now we'll talk again in a year, and I hope that's. But I guess I'm really curious though. Some of those decisions are very hard, but they're very necessary at the same time. Um, was there was there a reckoning that kind of came, and you just said, if we're going to make it, we're going to have to do this?
Yeah, it's as you know, Gio and I founded the business with our own money. We take a very significant pride of ownership in everything that we've built and our team has built here. And about close to 2 years ago, we saw that we weren't delivering at the rate that we had expected to deliver. We had the demand, we had order growth, we had production capabilities, but infrastructure continued to be our biggest constraint. And we said, if we don't fix this, we're going to end up in the same fate as some of these other companies that didn't manage their cash well.
Right.
And so we really had to make some of those hard decisions. And I obviously nobody ever wants to make those decisions, but I think for the benefit of the enterprise, for the benefit of the company and our customers, and for the employees that remain at Exos, we needed to make those decisions to ensure that we had a future.
Sure.
And so we did that. It was very difficult, and I think we're through that trough now and really seeing some of the growth opportunities beyond that phase that exist in higher volumes in our national account customers placing bigger orders and fixing infrastructure hurdles, and building a future.
Well, I think the infrastructure we talked about a little bit. You bring your own, basically BYO. Let me ask you a little bit, just on the technology side. We're hearing a lot more about LFP batteries now, lithium iron phosphate. Is that where you're headed on a battery side?
We are. So we started actually with NMC batteries and have several hundred vehicles out there operating on the road with those battery packs, running great. Still continuing to deliver package, food, all kinds of goods. But a couple years ago, as we went through the supply chain crisis, we recognized that we were a little too constrained with one vendor for batteries. And we saw significant price increases, and we started evaluating other options. And that prompted us to really take a long, hard look at LFP chemistries. And what we realized is that in the last 5 years prior to making the decision, LFP chemistry had come a long way in terms of energy density at the volumetric and gravimetric level, and also had made significant strides on the economic front. So it was really competitive with the NMC technology we were seeing and had significant trajectory to continue to be lower cost.
Well, durability and safety, of course, you didn't even mention them, but who are you still working with on?
So we work with a number of suppliers. CATL is our primary supplier and been a great partner to us. We anticipate and hope to continue to work with them for years to come. But they've built an incredibly reliable battery system.
And they have a huge market share. However, it's interesting that you've got this joint venture, mostly for heavy duty, but it may well be for medium duty and that sort of thing, coming from, I guess it's PACCAR and Cummins and Daimler, I believe, right? Did I get that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right.
So it's interesting that we're going to onshore it basically in Mississippi.
Yeah.
And 2027 thereabouts. Our next energy out in Michigan. Where I'm from. So it does appear that there's a bit of a change now.
There has been a focus, I think, on North American production and domestication of cell manufacturing. we looked at this space very long and hard and tried to understand where is the value proposition, not because we wanted to become a cell supplier, but to figure out how we source adequately, how we select the right partners. And one thing I'll say, when you're setting up a new greenfield battery plant, it's a minimum of a 5-year process, right? You're long cycles of getting to that development. And so we're just kind of waiting for the industry to shake out to see what's going to happen. I think there's a lot of benefits about North American production with the IRA and some of the incentives there for producing in North America and the US. There's also some recent tariff changes with Section 301 that are going to start to impact some of the supplies coming from Asia. Mm-hmm. But realistically, the vast majority of production is still concentrated in Asia. And so as we ramp production, we'll still source from there and continue to get parts from there. But as qualified, capable, high quality suppliers onshore in North America, we hope to be able to build and engineer packs here too.
Well, I was going to say, and you mentioned 301, and I think it's very important that we understand that really no matter who wins the election in November, tariffs are going to be a part of this. And I presume that's going to impact costs.
It is. And I think one thing people assume is that there's no tariffs today, but that's really not the case. We already pay tariffs everywhere we look. We are in a global supply chain. So our vehicles source components from, I believe it's 4 continents, right? And that just gives you an idea of the complexity of our modern supply chains today. Sure. Whether you're talking about chips, battery cells, commodity components like steel or plastics, you're gonna rely on a global supply chain. And I think it's a bit naive to assume we can concentrate everything here. But it's really about managing that process. One of our board members has a great saying that he coined in his time at Caterpillar. And he said that Caterpillar was a logistics business with a minor interruption for manufacturing. Okay. I like to think about our business in a similar way, in that we are a logistics business. We're really building the best technology from different parts of the globe, homologating it, engineering it, incorporating it into a great system, a reliable system that works for our customers. And managing that logistics in many ways is as complex as the manufacturing process too.
Sure. Yeah, I think a number of companies that sort of think of themselves that way, and they probably should. Honestly, that's why supply chain is one of the things that, it's really what we're about at FreightWaves. I mean, the FreightWaves media piece anyway. Exactly. Listen, Dakota, we could probably go on, but this has been great. Thank you. Really appreciate the time, and we'll look forward to seeing you again and keeping up with you guys.
Absolutely. Thanks for making the time. Good to see you, Alan.
Good to see you.